This podcast episode, this English lesson, is going to be super useful if you want to learn common phrases and also get some really good listening practice, because I'm going to talk about language use and also just what it's like going to restaurants in the USA and also in the UK. The topic for today is restaurants, and the first phrase I want to teach is eating out. Okay, to eat out. And this means to go to a restaurant or to go somewhere to eat. So someone might say, should we eat out tonight? Should we eat out tonight? And that is the most common way to talk about going to a restaurant, especially in the USA. And before we continue with the lesson, be sure to subscribe to the channel or follow if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And then also share this lesson with a friend. So just click that share button and send it to one of your best friends or a friend who's not your best friend. Before we go into the phrases too, I want to say from my experience, and this is just my experience, in the UK, people don't go to restaurants as much as people in the United States of America. So it's more common, in my opinion, to go to a restaurant when you live in the USA. There are also more international food options available for you. And if you go to the USA too, you'll notice there are a lot of Mexican restaurants, whereas in the UK, it's more common to see Indian restaurants. But before you even go to a restaurant, there's a little bit of planning involved here. You have to decide where to go, if you need a reservation, and also think about the type of food you feel like eating. A super common phrase here is to say, where should we go for dinner tonight? Where should we go for dinner tonight? Before deciding where to go, maybe you need to decide if you want to go or not. So you might ask the question, should we eat out tonight? Should we eat out tonight or just have something here? And this is when you and your friend or your partner decide if you want to go to a restaurant or not. If you decide to go, you'll say, where should we go? Where should we go for dinner tonight? Someone usually says something like, well, I'm in the mood for Italian food. I'm in the mood for. This is like saying, I feel like having Italian food, or very directly, I want Italian food. I want to go to an Italian restaurant. And then if you know your restaurants in the town you're in, then usually you have a little brainstorming session where you say, what about this place? Or what about that place? And this is when you have a good debate or maybe sometimes even an argument over where you should go. So you'll say, what about that place that we went to last time? What about this restaurant? And then some places you need to have a reservation. It's not always necessary, but some places require a reservation. And if you're deciding just to go out for that evening, then usually you'll go to a place that's not as formal with the reservations, and they always have space and tables available for you. So a question you might ask here is, do we need to book a table or can we just show up? And just show up means go to the restaurant without booking a table or making a reservation. When you get to your restaurant of choice, after you've done the research, you've had your arguments, you've looked on the Google Map for the reviews, you arrive at the restaurant. Now, sometimes it's difficult to park at the restaurant. Some restaurants in the US have parking and lots of parking. Others are on high streets or main streets where you have to park somewhere else and walk to the restaurant. But you get there, you open the door, and there's someone at the front who will say something like, oh, do you have a reservation? Or how many for? So normally you don't make that first choice of saying something. So in a lot of English courses, you'll hear people say, oh, when you get to the restaurant, you say, hi, we have a reservation. Or do you have a table for 4? However, in most cases, they're going to say the first thing, which is good. So they'll say like, for how many? Or they'll notice that there are 2 of you and say, for 2. And then the words you don't want to hear are something like, well, we have a 30-minute wait. Would you like me to put your name on a list? We have a 30-minute wait. Would you like me to put your name on the list? And that's when you have to make the decision of if you're going to stay at that restaurant or go somewhere else. In most cases, I tend to go somewhere else. Or I might say, is there room at the bar? Is there room at the bar? And that's when you can sit at the bar and have your meal there. But luckily, in this situation, there's a great table for two by the window so you can people watch. People watch. I love people watching. It's one of my favorite things to do. And it just means you're sitting there watching the world go by, watching people do their thing. And you can do that if you get a table by the window. Like I mentioned before, there are lots of different types of restaurants. And in the US, a very common restaurant is the grill, which is similar to the English pub. It's not as good, but it's very similar to that, where you're going to get, you can think of burgers and fries and different types of sandwiches. You can also get salads as well. And then they have cheap beer there too. Those places are more casual. There are also some places as well where you go order your food at the counter and then you take a number to your table and they bring the food over when it's ready. But as you probably know, the US is all about service. Service. I'm going to talk about how this relates to paying later. But usually someone comes over after you're sat at the table and they'll say, "Hi, my name is Louise and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I get you started on a drink?" I tend to order some type of drink and say, "Can I get a water as well?" And sometimes they look at me in a confused way because they don't understand. They say, "Water?" I say, "Yeah, oh, water, water." And this is the big pronunciation difference between British and American English, where you say water in the UK or water, water. And also in the US, it is water, water, or something like that. And then the server will also ask, "Are you ready to order or do you need a few more minutes? Are you ready to order or do you need a few more minutes?" And for some reason, everyone says here, "I think we're ready." No, "I think we're ready." Not "we're ready." "I think we're ready." And this is just sounding more polite and not as direct to say, "No, we are ready right now." We're saying, "I think we're ready." And when it's time to order, you'll use a phrase like, "I'll have the pasta with chicken, please." Or, can I get the burger, but without onions?" Again, in the US, when your food comes, the server will often come over and say, "How is everything? How is everything?" They tend to do this. They usually do this when you're taking your first bite and your mouth is full of food. And then you have to respond and go like, "Yeah, it's good, it's good, it's good." Something I hate doing is talking about or telling the wait staff, the servers, that there's a mistake. But I do it. So let's say they bring you broccoli instead of French fries. Then I'm going to say something and say, "Excuse me, I ordered fries and didn't order broccoli." And they'll say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll just go get you a quick basket of fries right now. I'll be right back." And then you go on, eat your food. The server comes over and they see some empty plates and they'll say, "Can I get these out of your way? Can I get these out of your way?" Which means, can I take these plates away from your table? They'll ask if you want anything else, but if you're ready just to pay and leave the restaurant, in the US you'll say, "Can we get the check, please?" Or, "Could we have the check, please?" In the UK you'll say, "Can we get the bill, please? Can we get the bill?" So check in American English, CHECK, and bill in British English. The hard part is knowing how much to tip in the US. At the moment, it's standard to leave 20%. And although this is not obligatory, it's something that everyone just does. It's the custom thing to do. So you add 20% on to how much it costs. So if the meal is $20, you leave $4. If it's 50, you leave 10. And then you do some math, add things up, and then you leave the total amount and sign the check. Now, oftentimes after the meal, or even during the meal, you'll talk about your experience, what you like, what you dislike, how the food is. And sometimes you have some regrets as well. For example, you might say, oh, I should have ordered the burger. I got a salad, but I should have ordered the burger, which means along the lines of, I wish I had ordered the burger. The burger would have been better. Another one is, I should have left a bigger tip. I should have left a bigger tip, meaning that you left a tip that you don't think is enough. Maybe you didn't tip enough. I should have left another tip. If you didn't enjoy the experience, you might say, the food was okay, but it wasn't worth the price. It wasn't worth the price, which means that the food was too expensive for what it was. It wasn't worth the price. You might complain that you're still hungry and say, I'm still hungry. Those portions were way too small. Those portions were way too small, which means they didn't give you enough food on your plate. If it was really good, you might say something like, that was one of the best meals I've had in a long time. That was one of the best meals I've had in a long time. Or the burger was so good. And this is where you really emphasize the so. The burger was so good. People often talk about the service as well. They might say, that server was really rude. That server was really rude. Or, that server was great. That server was great. Now, sometimes, instead of eating out at the restaurant, you'll get takeout. Or in British English, you'll hear takeaway. A lot of people use things like Uber Eats or Deliveroo to have the food delivered to their home. But you can also order at restaurants and go pick it up. To pick it up. It's very rare that I get takeout. I prefer to either cook at home or oftentimes go to a restaurant. But every now and then I'll get takeout and use an app, especially if it's a Friday night, everyone is feeling tired and we just want to get something easy. And then there are also the fast food restaurants that are very popular in the US with drive-thrus, where you go in your car, you order from your window, and then you go to the next window and your food is delivered. This is very common as well to get coffee, especially at the Starbucks chain. There are Starbucks all over the US, and a lot of them have drive-thrus, especially in normal-sized cities. Let's finish the lesson with 3 restaurant idioms. The first one is to bite off more than you can chew. And you can imagine somebody eating something in their mouth, but they can't chew it all because they have put too much food in their mouth. Now, this is used to mean to take on more than you can handle. So let's say that you have a job and then you get another job and then you do some extra freelance work or contracting work on the side. You might say, oh, with all this work, I've bitten off more than I can chew. I have bitten off more than I can chew. Something similar, an idiom similar, is have a lot on your plate. To have a lot on your plate. So you might say, for example, I wanted to go out for dinner, but I have a lot on my plate with work this week. And this means to have a lot of responsibilities or things to do and lots of tasks to do. To have a lot on your plate. And you'll hear people say, I have a lot on my plate at the moment. I have a lot on my plate at the moment. And the third one is leave a bad taste in your mouth. To leave a bad taste in your mouth. And this means to leave a negative impression. And talking about a restaurant, you might say, that experience left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't think I'll come back. I don't think I'll come back. It left a bad taste in my mouth. Okay, so those are the different restaurant phrases and the listening practice related to restaurants. What to do now is to take more lessons with me, more podcast episodes, and also if you're on YouTube, explore the YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, look back at some older episodes and just start listening to those ones too. And just keep learning English. Keep going with it. Listen to these podcast episodes and take my advice that I talk about in the description so you can better improve your English. Thank you so much for learning with me, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.